And join the pickup game. Do you pick up what I'm saying? Hey trainers, we had to make it easy for your payments. Deposit to your bank with ease, that's how you make a statement. You can manage a schedule, that's gonna bring you peace of mind. Push notifications set to never keep you in the blind. Location services on, come put your game on the map. If you came to run up the stats and you train, is where it's at. Practice makes perfect on the court, I'm burning drills up. Always had to drive, just had to turn my wheel up. I would do it by myself until I feel stuck, but then I found an app to get my skills up.
NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And, NIL has become a hot button topic, a buzzword word in college basketball. It wasn't invented for college basketball, right? Pro athletes and other people have been making money on their name, image, and likeness forever, right? It means, using your name, image, and likeness for, ads, to sell products, to do appearances, it's making sponsorship money, endorsement money, using it for nonprofit initiatives, right? It's just using your image, right? If I, Daniel Poneman, do an appearance at a local car dealership and I sell some cars as a result, they're using my name, image, and likeness. If I post an ad on my social media, that's using my name, image, and likeness. Actually, it's funny, now that I think about it, we don't often differentiate between what's name, what's image, what's likeness, right? We kind of just group it together as one category, but that's another conversation. But in the college sports space, NIL has transformed from what its original definition was to now it's its own thing. It's like when we are gonna chat online, we call it Zooming, even if we're on Google Meets or Microsoft Teams, it's just a Zoom, right? NIL has become its own kind of word with its own definition, right? And it stands for basically college athletes making money.
Yeah.
So there's the original version of NIL, which is how I think the rule was intended, of making money on ads and endorsements and things like that. And now it's transformed to this world where there's these things called NIL collectives, where college athletic programs have these external organizations that raise money, that give guaranteed contracts to college athletes to play their sport. And the way those contracts work is, an athlete signs with, let's say, University of Kentucky for $500,000 with their NIL collective. Each month they'll have to do some type of appearance or Instagram post or something having to do with their NIL, right? So there's quid pro quo, right? You can't just give them the money. They have to do an NIL, something with their NIL for it to be within the rules, and then they'll get guaranteed payments from these NIL collectives. So a lot of people have said, well, NIL is just pay for play, which there is a case to be made for that. But as long as guys are using their name, image, and likeness with these collectives in exchange for that money, it does qualify within the rules of as being NIL.
What factors make an athlete marketable? What make them desirable?
Yeah, and I'm going to keep it 100% real here, right? Like, again, like we talked about, there's two categories of NIL. There's NIL collectives, which are paying athletes directly. And then there's, traditional NIL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very few athletes in college sports have traditional NIL value, right? Like, there are guys, people like Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers, right? Or, there's certain, there's a guy I know at LaSalle, Khalil Brantley, that has 60,000 Instagram followers, right? You've got a huge Instagram following, or you're a national star. You have money in the tradition. You have opportunity in the traditional NIL marketplace, right? So, if you have marketing value, right, there are tons of ways to capitalize on that, and we all know different ways you can build your following, build your brand, whether it's getting a larger social media following, engaging with your audience. But the vast majority of college athletes who are making money from NIL collectives really don't have mainstream marketing ability in the way that an NBA player or a celebrity would. But however, a case could be made that these NIL collectives truly are paying them for their NIL value, because when a college basketball team plays well, they go to the Final Four, they win conference, their school admissions go up, the visibility of that university goes up. It's great marketing for their school. These college sports teams are marketing vehicles for the universities themselves, that whether they're, nonprofit or not, they're bringing in tons of money. I saw a study, a few years ago. I remember, like, when Florida Atlantic or when George Mason, when mid-majors went to the Final Four, admissions went up like 5 to 10%, or applications next year. Right? Tons more money in because of those college teams. So they are using their name, image, and likeness to promote an organization. It's just not in the brand building way that we traditionally think of it. That question all the time when I talk to guys, high school recruits, families, or guys in the transfer portal. They're like, okay, this NIL collective is offering me $300,000 guaranteed to go play for this school. Well, Dan, can you help me get marketing deals on top of that?
Yeah.
And my answer is, hey, if you have 3,000 followers on social media, no, I have 10,000 followers. No one's giving me NIL deals.
Right.
But if you are really talented and you can help a team win, there's going to be NIL collectives that are going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars, because if that team wins, it's good for the collective, it's good for the university, it's good for all parties involved. But as far as getting outside marketing deals outside of the context of that collective, you need to be marketable. And we know the ways that you become marketable. It's you put yourself out there, you engage with your audience, you grow your social media following. Social media is the driver of NIL value across the board. Like, there's rare exceptions of Caitlin Clark, who can be on a TV commercial, right? But outside of that, for most college athletes, you get 50, 100,000 followers. Yeah, you can get a little ad for $1,000 to $2,000 there. But if you've got 3,000 followers, it ain't happening for you.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. When you talk about these NIL collectives, are they, on most cases, just divided equally amongst all 12 to 15 players on a roster? Is it based on your performance, like on a professional team, where it's incentivized for guys who play the most or score a lot or, produce? Like, how do you see them divided?
Yeah, so when NIL Collective started, everybody had a different idea of how to do it. And I know some schools that did try to do everybody equal, right? And those schools have changed their strategy because it worked, right? Yeah. You can't have the last guy on the bench making as much as a star. It's just not going to work. Because of the current rules, you can't have performance-based individual statistical performance-based incentives in those contracts. You cannot tie NIL compensation to on-court performance. Now, there are team benchmarks that you can reach to get bonuses. Hey, if the team makes the postseason, or if you go to the Final Four, you can get a bonus in your contract, because then I guess it makes you more marketable because you're playing more games, you're being on a bigger stage. But generally, these NIL collectives have a budget that are raised from boosters, donors, sponsors, people who were previously donating to a new scoreboard or a new practice facility. They're donating to the collective, and then they'll have whether it's the coaching staff or the GM or the director of the collective are deciding how to divide that money up, just like a pro team would in free agency. Like, I was talking to a friend yesterday who was a GM of a team in Portugal previously, and I was like, hey man, you'd actually be really good to be a GM of a college team now, because the budgets are similar to pro teams in Europe, and the way you have to be crafty and divide, hey, if I have a $500,000 budget, am I giving $250 to one guy and splitting the rest evenly? Am I doing 100, 150, 50, 50? How are you dividing this up to create a winning roster? But it's essentially become free agency, and these NIL collectives have budgets just like a pro team would. There's just a lot less rules and parameters within this marketplace, which is something we need to solve.
So how have you been able to guide athletes and parents through those complex rules within the NIL space? Because I would guess they're ever changing since it's such a new thing.
Well, I'm not only guiding parents and players, I'm guiding coaches, because the rules are constantly changing, and there's a lot of gray area. And the NCAA said this, but the courts in West Virginia and Tennessee said this, and it's constantly changing. I mean, even just 2 days ago, there was an announcement, the NCAA made an announcement that grad transfers have to be in the portal by May 1st, whereas previously grad transfers could leave at any point. Well, I knew about that rule months ago. I don't know why they just announced it. I guess I heard about it early. People started freaking out. Now, that rule was actually made months ago. The NCAA just announced it again, I guess, the other day, but people didn't know about it. The rules are changing constantly, and there's so many different voices. The courts say this, the NCAA says this. So it's my job to be on top of all the rules, on top of all the changes, on top of the way the market is evolving, and communicate with all the stakeholders in the industry, whether it's players, AAU coaches, college coaches. I'm constantly talking to my friends that work at the NCAA to get the latest information so I can make sure everybody's on top of it, that they're working within these ever-changing rules. And outside of the rules, just the ever-changing nature of the marketplace, right? It started with traditional NIL, then it became NIL collectives, and now people are doing multi-year deals. Now they're doing postseason incentives. Now they're doing buyouts. Now there's all these evolving trends within the marketplace, and it's my job to be on top of all of them and use that information to help make sure schools are using them to their advantage to build their program and make sure while staying within the rules and making sure that the players are understanding the rules and the families are understanding the rules, but also able to capitalize on their NIL and land in the right spot.
Something you just said stuck out to me, and I don't want to move on before we kind of dive in just a little bit more. You said buyouts. So are you saying that now when athletes hit the transfer portal, if they have been receiving X amount of dollars in NIL collective money, that now the next university or next collective that they might receive has to buy out their contract? That sounds extreme.
This is actually an idea that I proposed on Twitter a few months ago that people have started to adapt and look into. Essentially, at the low and mid-major level, coaches are getting frustrated because you develop talent and you build it and they leave for the bigger school. Well, in Europe, in European pro sports, there's a system that everybody wins in this. If you're Baskonia in Spain and you sign an 18-year-old to a 5-year deal, and 3 years in Barcelona wants him, they can't just take him. They have to pay the buyout. So great, the kid gets to go to Barcelona, and the team gets compensated for doing all the hard developmental work for someone else to get the talent, right? So I propose to mid-majors, hey, if your budget is $300,000 and you're giving a freshman a $80,000 contract for 4 years, well, if after 2 years and you've developed him, a Big Ten school wants to pay him $500,000, we'll create a buyout clause in there where if they're breaking their marketing contract, they have to pay you back for the developmental work you did. But on the other side, hey, if you sign this kid to this deal and you want to run him off because he's not good enough, you have to pay the buyout to get out of your side of the deal, right? Creating real contract structures where the player's protected and the school is protected if the kid moves on. I had a conversation with a Big Ten head coach yesterday, where he said, hey, Dan, how do we structure these deals to help retain our players, right? Like, we don't want guys leaving for the transfer portal. How do we use NIL deals to keep our guys? And I said, well, I proposed the buyout. He's like, yeah, we don't want to chase down guys after they leave and collect money, even though in a traditional buyout, it would be the other team, like the collective would be paying it. Right. But I said, well, how about retention bonuses? If you're paying a guy $100,000 a year, give him an extra 25 that gets paid on the day after the portal closes, right? So he gets all his money from last year, but we're going to give you a big bonus if you stay in after the portal closes to incentivize guys to stay. You can't just throw your hands up and say, oh, we're losing all our guys, it's not fair. Get creative. Figure out a way to create contracts that get your guys to stay. Right. In a evolving marketplace that's constantly changing, the winners are the ones who are creative and see the future.
That's right. And that's the money they were going to give to the next kid that either transfers in or comes in as a freshman anyway. So why not just give a retainer bonus to the guy that shows loyalty? I love it.
You can give a retention bonus to your current guy and keep him, or you can pay 5 times more for a guy in the transfer portal.
Yep, it's like upgrading that wedding ring or that engagement band you gave your girl years ago. All right.
I had conversations with high major coaches during this season. I was like, hey, I've got a guy in your roster. His value is going to be this on the open market, or you can give him a fraction of that right now, extend his contract for next year, lock him in for next year, and he's not going to hit the portal. Or you can wait till free agency, and if you want to retain him, it's going to cost substantially more. So sometimes I'm trying to help schools say, hey, this kid's happy. He wants to stay here. Don't let him go to the portal. Give him a reason to stay. Just give him a nice extension. Yeah. But a lot of these college coaches still have the archaic mindset that there should be loyalty and the kid should stay just because they coached him. And that's not the reality, because what's funny, and this is going to get convoluted, there's one coach who in the Big 12, who I was saying all year, I've got a guy on your roster, he's going to be valuable in the open market, give him an extension so he doesn't have to look at the portal. And he was like, I don't talk about extensions in the season. I don't talk about NIL in the season. And he had this kind of mindset that the kid should just be loyal. Well, this same coach left for a different job, right? So I think there's still this archaic mindset from a lot of coaches of, we shouldn't have to be negotiating. Guys should just stay just because they should want to stay. They're all looking for new jobs themselves.
DP, do you see the coaching landscape just changing and, you know, fresh blood coming in because maybe the old traditional coaches aren't able to adjust? Or do you see a large amount of coaches trying to, you know, turn over a new leaf and figure things out for the sake of their job?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think I've seen older coaches who are adapting really, really well. I've seen older coaches who are like, you know, okay, this is a small change to our industry, but let's get on top of it and let's move to the future, and have done incredibly well. I've also seen old coaches who are just throwing their hands up and saying, I can't figure this thing out, and retiring, right? I also do think there will be an influx of, you know, NBA executives or international GMs or, you know, young people who understand this new world, who are coming in as general managers and NIL directors. Now, what's funny is I've seen some schools hire, you know, NIL directors who are more, you know, fundraisers, which is fine. It's important. But when you have a multi-million-dollar budget and you have to allocate those to build a roster, that's not a skill set that most college coaches know how to do, and the fundraisers don't know how to do. It's a GM role. And I find myself sometimes going crazy negotiating with fundraisers or college assistants or college head coaches, where I'm a professional negotiator. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm trying to explain the nature of the marketplace, the economics of it, you know, what his value would be at a different place. And it's like I'm talking to a wall, because these people have been coaching for 30 years.
Assistants, you know.
Never dealt with free agency before, but this is what we do every year. So to me, it's a native language, but I think each school should have somebody who is a fair sparring partner.
Well, what is your response to those purists out there who feel like NIL is negatively affecting the game, the college landscape, players in level of integrity, loyalty, character, you know, in managing the responsibility of being a college athlete? Because there are some out there.
Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Of course.
I would tell them to go fuck themselves. Because I have kids. I just spoke to a kid today who wants to enter the portal. His mother's sick. The school he's at offered him $15,000 to stay. There's other schools that have $100,000 for him. He can go there, take $100,000, help his sick mom pay her medical bills, take care of his family. If you say that's ruining the integrity of the game, fuck you.
Yeah.
And in a world where college coaches are making millions of dollars, the NCAA is making millions of dollars, multi-billion-dollar TV deal, everyone's making money but the kids. And we all know that that's not right. Yeah, are there complications with the current system we have? Absolutely. We need guardrails. We need free agency parameters. We need more set contract structures. We need agent certification. Yeah, we need more rules and parameters within this. But at the end of the day, when you look out at a sold out stadium and millions of people watching on TV and people wearing the jerseys, and you say, oh, kids shouldn't get their piece of that because it's going to ruin the integrity of the game, or oh, kids don't know. And one thing I hear all the time is, oh, well, these kids will go crazy. They don't know what to do with the money. That's racist. That is. I hear young black men can't be trusted with millions of dollars when they're 18 to 22. There's plenty of kids walking around college campuses with trust funds. Right? Not going crazy. Oh, but because they come from families with money, they know how to handle it. Oh, but when it's people who are getting money for the first time, they can't. Look, I've represented a lot of guys in NIL. Yeah, I've had some situations where guys spent all their money right away or didn't have money when tax season came along, and I've tried to guide them and coach them through that. But I've had guys make $500,000 and not touch it and just live off their scholarship checks and put that money away for savings for graduation. I've had guys pay medical bills and legal bills for their family. I've had guys help move their parents out of a 1-bedroom apartment with 5 people to a 3-bedroom apartment using their NIL money. And if you think that's ruining the integrity of the game, I'm questioning your integrity. I'm questioning where you're from with that.
Yeah. Very well said. How do you feel that the transfer portal has affected NIL, and vice versa? How has NIL affected the transfer portal in college basketball specifically?
They go hand in hand, because the open market is always going to create the maximum value, right? If you are a player who can't leave, right, where you have to sit out for a year if you're going to leave, your value at the next spot is not going to be as much, and you have no leverage to negotiate with your current spot.
Sure.
But with the transfer portal and with the rules now where you can transfer as many times as you want, every year is free agency, and it's driving prices up. It's creating a frenzy. It's creating chaos. But I do not have sympathy for the college coaches, because this is what pro teams deal with every year, right? If you're a GM in France and you have 13 guys on your roster, chances are the best guys are going to move up to Spain, the worst guys are going to move down to Finland, and you're going to retain 4 or 5 guys, and you're going to have to build a new roster every single year. That's the job. And college coaches it's harder because they're used to having retention, because the rules the NCAA had in place prevented guys from transferring. But hey, junior college coaches did this every year. Junior colleges are 2-year schools. Every year they get new guys. Junior college coaches are thriving in the new NIL environment now when they move up to Division I, because they're like, I've been building rosters on the fly my whole career. So I don't have sympathy I do have sympathy for coaches who their boosters or the administration won't help them raise money and won't give them the resources, so they're losing guys. That's tough. But it's also no different than a low budget team in France losing your guys to the Asvel, or the high budget teams in France, right? Or losing a guy to ACB. But it's tough when you lose guys, but then you got to get crafty and find the next guy, find that player in Finland who was killing, take a chance on him. And that's the way the portal turns.
So I've got another 2-sided question. How do you, in your experience, view parents and athletes on one side choosing schools specifically because of NIL or the financial gain, and versus fit, right? Like choosing it because of the play style and the kids actually liking that school. The other side of this question is, do you also see coaches, as you just mentioned before, having to make decisions now because they're operating on a budget like a general manager, recruiting and taking players solely based off what they can afford now versus fit, and like recruiting kids that fit their play style system and the whole, everything that just comes with being a coach? Like how has NIL affected those two spaces when it comes to fit versus the financial incentives?
When I sign a new guy for NIL, or I advise a guy for NIL, I do like kind of an intake survey. I ask every client about what matters to them, because it's my job as an agent not to tell you what you should care about. It's to listen to what you care about and then help you find something that fits that. So I ask all my guys, how important is money? How important is academics? How important is pro development? How important is winning? How important is geography? How important is coaching style? Let's figure out the things that matter to you, and I'm going to go help you find a spot that checks those boxes. And I've heard one of my biggest pet peeves is coaches equating, oh, he's all about the money. Like they're judging him. That's a bad thing. Oh, he doesn't care about money. He's a good kid. I've heard that before. Oh, he's a good kid. He's not worried about money. Who the fuck are you to say what he should care about? You don't know his family situation. You don't know his life. It's not up to you to decide. In any other business, if someone gets out of college and says, I'm going to take the biggest money offer, we're not judging them. We're applauding them. When NBA players go to free agency and they get paid, we applaud them. But for some reason in college sports, there's still this stigma with some people of wants the most money about the wrong things, doesn't care about money about the right things. And I think that is patently wrong. Now, I have had some guys I've helped that have said, hey, money's not that important. I want like a good grad degree, or I want to go to the Final Four. Awesome. Well, I'll find you that spot. But I've also had kids say, hey, my mom's sick. my family is struggling. I need the biggest bag, and I'll find you that bag, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I also think I've had coaches who don't have as much money as another school say, oh, well, I guess fit doesn't matter anymore, or well, I guess he's just going for the money. No, how about this? Maybe the place that has the most money also is a good fit, also has good player development. Like Louisville and Kentucky and Arkansas and USC and a lot of these schools that have big budgets. Are you trying to tell me that because they have money, they also can't develop players? That they also can't be good for your pro stock? A lot of places there are places that have a lot of money that are just throwing bags at people, not thinking about roster construction. They're just desperate, throwing bags to try to get guys. And I'm aware of those spots, and I'm guiding guys away from those spots. You don't want to go to a spot where the coach is on the hot seat just throwing bags out because they need to save their job. Let's avoid that. But there are some situations where you can get paid a lot and also develop and win. And also a lot of times what I tell guys is, look at not just how much you're making, but how much are you making in relation to the other guys in the roster. If we're talking about opportunity, if you're making 80K somewhere, but there's 5 guys on the team making 6 figures, probably not the best spot for you.
Gotcha.
But if you're making 80K somewhere and you're the highest paid guy on the team, they're going to play who they pay. So maybe that's a good situation for you, right? So don't just look at how much you're making, but look at how much you're making in relation to their overall budget, because that's going to indicate how much they value you and how much opportunity you're going to get on the court. Of course, we still look at academics, fit, winning, coaching style, play style. We're still taking visits, we're still taking Zooms, but the money just becomes another component of that. And on the other side of it, yes, coaches are having to make quicker decisions because of the nature of the transfer portal, where they can't, get to know guys as well oftentimes before pulling the trigger. But they're not just saying, I've got 80K, who wants it? They're saying, I've got 80K, let me evaluate 6, 7 different guys and figure out who I want to offer this to that can be right for my program. And you're not going to nail every one, but it's not an either or. It's not, well, it's all about money, so it's not about fit anymore. No, it can be about both, and it is in most cases.
What advice can you give to the athletes and parents out there when it comes to protecting their brand? So maybe they've already attained, a college scholarship or an NIL opportunity, and now it's about like continuing that progress, right? Obviously, you've seen some who haven't done a good job of it. What advice would you give?
What I would tell guys is these NIL collectives are funded by, actually, I think we talked about this last time we talked. They're funded by boosters who love that program. They're giving away free money because they want to see this team win. So get to know those boosters, get to know those donors, get to know those fans, because if you win, and I know a guy named Matt Mooney, he was on Texas Tech's Final Four team, 5-6 years back. He still goes back to Texas Tech every year and runs a camp every summer because they remember him as this hero. He built the relationships, he kept the relationships, he kept his community involvement, and he's willing to profit every year on a camp because people remember this Final Four run. So you can't wait till after you leave the school to come back and be like, hey, remember me? Build the relationships while you're there, because college athletic fan bases are some of the most rabid, insane fan bases in the world. Like they equate it to like European soccer. They love their school because if my school beats your school, it means I'm better than you. They're emotionally invested. So while you're there, get to know those fans, those boosters, those donors, those local businesses, because those are wells you can always come back to if you have success on the court.
How does the visibility of college athletes' NIL deals and what they agree to or what they're getting paid, how does that affect the pressure and the scrutiny that they're under now? Because ESPN has a ticker at the bottom of the screen, NBA free agency, we're all talking about what, the best guys in the league are getting paid. NFL, same thing, Major League Baseball, soccer. But now college sports are in that same vein where you can go on On3, or different platforms online and see what Bronny and all these different athletes are making. How does that impact the way that athletes are becoming scrutinized?
Well, I will say those On3 NIL values are not accurate. Like those are more based on marketing value, guesses, like ultimately like the numbers with NIL collectives in this free agency transfer portal marketplace are secret. And I do not report any of my guys. You will not find one report online about any of my guys, how much they're making. I've seen other agents report, according to this agent, this player made this much money. I don't want to put my guy's stuff on blast. I don't think it benefits a college kid for everyone to know you're making 400 grand.
Right.
Like private information until it has to be reported. It's the same thing overseas. Overseas, NBA, free agency dollar figures become part of the news cycle, but overseas they don't report those salaries. It's all private. So as much as we can keep it private, I think it does benefit the athlete. Now we saw something recently. There was a report Jeremy Roach got 1.4 million at Baylor. Everyone saw that news story. I don't know if it's true. I haven't confirmed it. I don't represent him, but I don't think it helps the kid, because we've already seen, like, I've had guys when they lose a game and someone gambled on that game, they're DMing death threats. But what happens when you're making 1.4 million and you're not playing well? You're going to get the scrutiny of fans and media. But at the same time, that's the nature of the beast. That's what that comes with being a professional athlete. And college athletics are now professional sports. When there's multi-million-dollar deals going around, you're a pro athlete now. No one feels sorry for 19-year-old Victor Wembanyama. If he plays bad and people get mad. And unfortunately, that's kind of the reality of college sports now. So do I think it's beneficial for athletes to have their dollar figures reported? Absolutely not. But if it does get to the point where those dollar figures get out, like, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
How can parents and athletes identify an agent, like you've been describing, that will have their best interests at heart and have that ethical balance? Yeah.
It's really challenging, man. Like, it's challenging because, like, in the NBA, there is a certification process to become an NBA certified agent. And then also you can look online and see how many clients they have, how many deals they've done. So, like, in the NBA, there's a little bit more of a above board vetting process, but even there, it's hard to know, right? Like, in college, there's no way to know. Anyone can put NIL agent in their profile and say they're an agent, have no idea what they're doing. As I've been putting out more content and tweets around the NIL space, I'll get DMs from NIL agents who have clients asking me really ridiculous questions. I've got on the phone with guys who have current college clients and be like, hey, I've never seen an NIL collective contract. Can you send me one to look at? Or, hey, do I talk to the collective before they commit or after they commit? Or like people who are just signing dudes and have no idea what they're doing, but how are you supposed to know? And I can't help everybody. I can't take on everybody. I know I trust me. There are other agents. I know it's not.
They better be paying you.
Yeah, they should be paying. But that's part of why I'm putting people on game via Twitter, because I want what's good for the overall marketplace. So I don't care if other people are taking my tips in my game and using it to sign clients. I've got enough clients. I'm doing well. I've got a good business. There are other good agents in this space, and it's not normal for agents to shout out other agents and say they're doing a good job. But like George Laneberg, Paolo, I don't know how to say his last name, Zamorano, Adam Pappas, Iman Shakahizadeh. Like, there are some guys who came from the NBA space who have become NIL agents who do a really good job because they've been doing it for decades. And there are guys like Mitt Whitner and Darren Heitner, lawyers who are advising guys who do a really good job. There are some people who are doing a good job, but there are far more people who are. I've heard crazy stories. I've talked to coaches where agents have come in and said, my guy wants $1 million and his market value is 300. And they're pricing their guy out of the market because they're asking for something crazy that's not rooted in reality. And the kid's blindly trusting them, and they're going to be left with no opportunity because the agent's greedy or just doesn't know how to handle free agency. I've heard, it's funny, I got a text the other day from a high major head coach at a school I've dealt with before, and he said, he brought me up in a meeting, and the collective director of their school was like, oh yeah, that's the one agent who actually asks for contracts and sends edits on the contracts, right? Which means they've done all these deals with agents and they're just signing them. They're not even reading the contracts. They're not asking for red lines. Sometimes I'll only send 1 or 2 edits. Sometimes my thing is red lined up and down because it's my job to read the contract, to make sure the money's guaranteed, to make sure the client is protected. But some of these guys are just getting out of college and calling themselves NIL agents, and it's just a money grab. and they're not in any way qualified to do this. And again, I'm not saying this because I want all the clients. I can't take on any more guys. I've got a full client load, but we need more qualified people in the space, and we need to qualify people to be elevated, because there's a lot of really bad actors.
You shed some light on some of the misconceptions about NIL and how it translates to athletes moving on to the professional level, because I think you did a good job in the beginning of this interview when you first of all defined NIL has been around. It's been around forever on the professional level, but you see it now more on the women's side, specifically with like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. People are not necessarily understanding, like, they're not going to lose their bag by turning pro. And I think that that's a common misconception, that NIL somehow only applies to college. As you explained earlier, they think NIL stands for college pay.
Yeah, I think there's two categories, even in the pro level, of having NIL value. There's, are you a star on the court? And thus you're going to get a signature shoe, and you're going to get State Farm, and you're going to get all this stuff. Or do you have a substantial following on social media where you're engaging? You know, it's like someone like, for instance, Georges Niang. Okay, Georges Niang has a podcast I watched with Grill Guy, one of my favorite Instagram personalities. Georges Niang is a solid NBA player, but he's really engaging. He's got a great podcast. He's building his NIL value. That podcast will continue after he's done playing, and people will still listen to him. You know, JJ Redick, we see his podcast he did with Tommy Alter and now with LeBron, where, you know, he's built his NIL value he's more valuable now than when he was playing. We see a lot of women's college basketball players. There are ways to build your value where it extends long beyond your playing career. And that generally comes from engaging with your audience and being, you know, I've had athletes ask, hey, can you like hire a marketing company to build my social media following for me? And I've tried that before, and it just doesn't work. Yeah, you can have someone posting on your behalf 3 times a week, posting pictures, but we live in a world of authenticity. Your fans know, kids know, they know if it's you engaging, if you're it's really you talking to them, or if it's some company posting nonsense. So like the best way to build your value is to understand your audience and engage with them. That's what I do, right? I'm building my NIL value by saying, oh, people are interested in me because they're interested in NIL and they want to know, and I know all the information. So I'm going to put out tweets every day, putting them on game. Some people will like them, some people won't. But I'm building my NIL value by saying what makes me unique, and how do I give that gift to the world and engage with them. And it takes work. No one's going to do it for you. But if you do it, you're going to have value long after you're done playing.
How can we better prepare athletes, parents, everyone that's in this NIL space to be ready for the tax implications that obviously follow, you know, them being paid and compensated?
Well, you know, what's interesting about it is like the tax part is a surprise to most college athletes. They're like, wait, I gotta pay what? Like, I had a guy who recently signed a $500,000 deal, and he was smart. He went on tax calculator on Google. It's like the state I live in, minus agent fees, minus my financial advisor. He was like, damn, I only get $320.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, that's actually pretty good. If you were in California, it'd be like $250, right? Yeah, so that's the nature of being an adult in America making money, is you've got to pay taxes. And I don't think college athlete taxes are in any way more complicated than most independent contractors. Yes, they're not employees, they're independent contractors, but I pay my employees as independent contractors. They got to go to H&R Block, they got to figure it out. I get most of my guys as financial advisors. There's a guy, I love Mark Eisenberg, who wrote the book Money Players years ago about advising athletes on how to save money and invest money. There are other people I work with that I'm actually drawing a blank on some of their names, but there are great financial advisors who can not only advise them but also educate kids on how to save, how to invest, what's risky, what's not risky. But at the end of the day, like, if you're an independent contractor and you're making money from NIL Collective, Google the tax rate in your state, Google the federal tax rate for your income bracket, and generally it's safe to just put away 30%. depending on the state, maybe, and depending how much you make, maybe 40, but somewhere between 20 and 40% you need to put away because they are coming for it. There's also, I've had guys not understand, like they want all their money up front. I'm like, hey, if you split it over 2 calendar years, you get half of it the first half of the season, half of it the second, you're in a lower tax bracket and you're actually keeping more of it. If you get it all up front, if you get 500K in one day, split it in half.
Okay,
right? But if you get 250, you're in a lower tax bracket, you keep more money. So I'm not a tax expert, I'm not a financial advisor, but I try to give my guys the best advice possible and put them with experts. But I think ultimately, like kids, if you're making money, put away 30% at least. Be prepared. I mean, you should be putting away way more than that, but at the very least, be ready to pay your taxes.